Fantastic. Yeah.
There we
So
go.
let people in. Great. Thanks. So let people in whenever you're ready. I'm all set.
Okay, we're live on Facebook and we're letting them in.
And now I just have to find where she's putting the questions here for the panel, all the way down, I guess.
At the top,
Yeah.
I just make it easy. Yeah.
Okay, you put it at the top or all the way at the bottom?
Top. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Kamal. How are you?
Fine.
Good to see you.
Hey.
You too.
Okay, gonna remove the waiting room. Okay, fantastic. So welcome everyone. Looking at the chat here. Nice. Hi, Paul. Starting to recognize you. I see you at many sessions.
Right, I'm just going to keep coming back till I get it right.
Thanks for joining us.
You bet.
Okay, great. So we're going to give a little minute real quick. Fantastic. Okay. So I think we're ready. Okay, well, since we're recording, hey. Okay, well, bonjour à tous et à toutes. Welcome, everyone. Thanks you for joining us for the third day of the Power Skills Virtual Career Conference. It's brought to you by the Career Advising and Transition Services of McGill School of Continuing Studies. So we normally start by asking to share from where you're joining us. But if you would like to add also what field you're in or what subject of interest brought you here. Since the topic is so vague, any information will be really helpful. This is a unique panel and there's a million possible questions that you can ask. My name is Nayo Garyepi and I have my colleagues here with me, Diana, Emily, saying hi there, and Valerie.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Rosalia should be here maybe later. And yeah, so I also wanted to thank all my wonderful team who's here to help you, to help us sort your questions from the chat. And feel free to ask them directly using your mic when the speakers are done. Even thought we're not in the same room, your participation is still key. And this will greatly enrich your experience for the session. So enough of me blabbering, let's jump to the introduction of today's 5 very diverse panelists. And I will ask them after to say a few words about them to help the audience know a little bit more about you. So first, we have Tarek Riman. He's a university instructor, founder, marketer, and 3 times best-selling author. We have Caren Carrasco, senior partner at Benjamin David Group, a Montreal-based marketing consultancy. We also have Jamie Benizri, a lawyer by trade, entrepreneur by heart, and Dr. Carola Weil, Dean of Continuing Studies at McGill University, and of course, Marcos Carvalho, Chief Revenue Officer and co-founder of NestReady. So if you want to say a little few words, anyone can start.
Well,
Whoever
maybe I'll
speakers.
start. I'll go ahead and start. I'd like to welcome my co-panelists and everyone who's come to this panel, and my intrepid CATS team and colleagues for organizing this. When they asked me to be on a panel that says, "Ask me anything," for a moment there, I thought, well, if I'm a smart PR professional, I will say no and run as far as I can from this. But I also happen to be risk happy, and I thought, well, this could be fun. So I'm here to entertain any kinds of questions. This is my 3rd career. I started out originally in international relations, working in diplomacy and conflict transformation, dodging bullets in conflict zones, which is very good preparation for academic administration. And then went on from there into eventually into advocacy for women and underrepresented communities in non-traditional fields of foreign and defense policy, and then into continuing and lifelong education and communication. And that brought me to Montreal 2 years ago. So delighted to be here with all of you.
Thank you, Carola.
Nice to
Caren,
meet
if you
you.
want to go next, or
I can go.
Tarek?
I can
Oh.
go next. Yeah. So I'm Caren Carrasco, originally from Venezuela, born and raised. I have been here in Canada for about 8 years. And I'm an entrepreneur. I co-founded about 4 years ago a marketing consultancy here in Montreal. I have been for the past 4 years very dedicated to build my business along with my co-founder. And outside of doing that, I'm very involved in the startup community as an entrepreneur, and as Montreal is booming right now with a lot of great ideas in entrepreneurship. I have been very involved in different programs as a mentor and coach for Founder Fuel, Montreal Inc. And one of my passions have been mentoring newcomers to Canada, as myself being an immigrant. I have been participating in different programs to support immigrants with their how they can adapt themselves to be in a new country. Same thing that happened to me a few years ago. And I'm super happy to be in the panel. I can be asked anything from business to marketing to mentoring to leadership to immigration. I'm open to answer any questions.
thank you, Caren. Marcos, if you want to go next.
Yes, absolutely. I was unmuting myself. Well, great opportunity here. Thank you very much for inviting me. As Carola was saying, I think is a very interesting topic. I'm actually more driven by challenge than anything else. So I thought it would be a good one here today. Not really knowing what to expect, but looking forward to it. So I'm also a tech entrepreneur. I've been in Canada for 11 years. I was raised in between France and Brazil. And since I arrived in Canada, worked for a few companies. I'm expert in business development and founded 3 startups. Today, I co-founded a company in fintech, and real estate, NestReady, as Nayo mentioned before, and also spend a fair amount of my time advising other early stage startups and mentoring a few founders.
Thanks, Marcos.
You're welcome.
Tarek, you seem ready to go next.
Hey, now, how are you? Hello?
Yeah,
Can you hear
hi,
me?
we hear you.
Perfect. How is everyone doing? I want to first say good job for the CATS team. Honestly, I know how hard you've worked to put this together. So great job. I hope you guys are going to take a good break after this this whole event. This whole week is over. You guys really deserve it. I'm really proud of you. I'm really proud to be in the same institution as you as well. So thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for giving back. A quick introduction about myself. My name is Tarek Riman. I was actually born and raised in Lebanon. And I moved to Canada around 11 years ago. I did my master's at Concordia. After that, I started working in multiple agencies, mainly in the marketing industry. From there, I didn't like the driven by profit. I wanted to go to driven by value. So I started my own agency also 4 years ago. And I've been working with a lot of companies, a lot of Fortune 500s. First and foremost, I'm a founder, I'm an entrepreneur. But also while I'm doing so, I always love to give back. So I'm into education from all doors. I teach at JMSP, I teach at Concordia. And I teach internationally also in universities in Beirut as well. And I love to give back in every way possible. I started a blog about Montreal. It's called Montreal Tips, actually mainly to give back to startups, entrepreneurs, immigrants, women entrepreneurs, anybody who's here to make a difference, anybody who's here to give back in any way possible. Thank you, Emily. Awesome blog. It is an awesome blog. And I wrote 3 books, 2 on marketing. One is on SEO, search engine optimization. It's called the SEO Way. One is called The Secrets to Capitalizing on Analytics. And one is about my journey in Europe and through life, which is called The Camino Within. It's a pleasure to be on this panel. Honestly, it's an honor. I know Marcos really well. Jamie, I've heard about him all the time. The rest of the panel as well. Carola, I work in the same school as her, so it's an honor to be there too. And Caren, it's an honor to meet you as well. It's a pleasure.
Well, hey, thank you, Tarek. And as you're speaking, some people from my team are sharing links in the chat, taking your questions. And now, last but not least, Jamie.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. I always like to go last. I like to listen to what people are going to say to try to, gauge what I should be contributing. That could be even a tiny bit inspiring. So, first of all, I'm humbled to be on this panel. I think it's just a great, eclectic bunch of panelists. So I'm humbled to be on the group. Look, I'm an ex-McGill grad. I've lived and breathed Montreal from the second I was born in the Montreal Jewish hospital, and entrepreneurship is my passion. It became a calling, and I tell people sometimes it's a curse. Sometimes I wish I chose a path that was a little bit easier, a little bit more predictable. But unfortunately, this was my calling, and this is what I made my life's mission, to verbalize legal services, to make them more easier to understand, easier to get, easier to deal with, to dispel the myth of the lawyer, the cliche lawyer, the billing by the second, and the inapproachable behavior and taboo that surrounded my industry. So I made it my mission to make it not about me, but to democratize and make it a little bit easier to get legal services. And so when I heard about Ask Me Anything, much like Madame Weil, who opened up the introductions, I said, well, I love to get out of my lane. I love to not be asked legal questions sometimes. And so this is why I'm on the panel, to selfishly answer things that are not legal.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jamie. And I guess Carola would like to also mention her name is pronounced Weil, but thank you for the love, and I'm glad you're here. So we're already starting to have a lot of questions in the chat. So I'll just start with an opening questions while we sort this out. And I hope that you're all energized and as excited as I am. So let's start with this one. Since we're in a soft skills conference, and I think that we all need this to survive the unexpected situation that changed all of our lives since March. I would like to know, how did you adapt, and what were your biggest challenges that you had to overcome during the COVID situation? Plus, if you have any advices you could share, you could give with the audience. If there's any volunteers in the speaker, or I can start with Carola, since I know we had a lot of changes at SES.
Yeah, so adapting, actually, I think what this crisis has shown is that human beings are much better at adapting than we think we are. And when push comes to shove, we're able to do it quite quickly. And even big lumbering organizations like McGill University, we were able to, as they say, pivot quite quickly. I think for me, the biggest challenge is that I'm a very social person, and the idea of interfacing with everyone just through this two-dimensional means, and not being able to give out hugs, that was maybe the hardest part. I would say we're also working much harder than we ever have before. I think it speaks for all of you as well, that now you can get on a call at 7, 8 in the morning, and you have your last one at 9 or 10, and because you didn't go anywhere, you somehow are available for all of these interactions. So managing one's time and making sure that you actually disconnect and get out and breathe fresh air and watch the construction holiday underway or whatever it is, I think that's been the biggest challenge.
Thank you, Carola. Who wants to continue on this?
I can jump. On my side, in terms of personal, one of the biggest challenge was to manage personal life and business. And I have 2 young kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and not having daycare available was a challenge. But between my family, we we did our best to keep kids at home for 3 months. And when I heard the news that they could be back to daycare, I was like screaming, like if I was selling a big contract to a client. It was the best news I could receive. That was on the personal. On the business side, I think one of the things, I don't know, it wasn't challenging, but it was a big takeaway and skill that we implemented at BDG is our speed to react. And I have been before very vocal about in business, everything is about speed. And that can go even about the way our government can act on certain things. And in this pandemic, speed was super key. I think one of the things that we really leverage is to act fast and make decisions that needed to be taken. Maybe not the easy decisions, but we were very agile and lean and fast to move. And I think that's the reason why the business is still open and we're doing our best to keep growing. So that was one of the big challenges and takeaways of this period.
Okay, thanks. And that's also a reason why we asked you to come here. We see that you're all really successful, even with this situation. Thanks. Does anyone want to jump in also?
Yeah, I can go next. I think the biggest challenge I had to face, or my team had to face, was to let go some team members. I think it was really difficult, especially because it was nothing related to what we were doing or what they were doing. And that's even harder in my opinion. So having to go through this was a big pain. And the way we adapt, actually my business partners and I was, as soon as we understood a little bit about what was going on, was starting to look for opportunities. And study really hard and keep our eyes open and our minds open to just, where there is a crisis, there is an opportunity and there are opportunities. So we just start building different projects on the side to complement the loss of revenue that we had. Yeah, that's the way we adapted, keeping our eyes open. And in terms of recommendations, what I think, the way we adapt, it's one of them. It's like looking for opportunities and studying hard, keep studying and seeing where we can benefit from this crisis, and staying healthy. I think was a big one for me at the beginning. Was hard, very active. I'm very, outdoors. I do a lot of outdoors activities, and I had to adapt to that and close people to me as well. So especially mentally was hard. So focusing on my mental health and my physical health was a big one. And last but not least, which I think is very important, is to not let fear take over. Fear is our worst enemy. So if we let fear take over, and then it's done. And just looking at the bright side and looking at the positive things, new opportunities, and staying away from fear.
Thanks, Marcos.
I'll take a stab at that and build on it if I may. I love what Caren said about staying agile, and I think that was for me such a guiding characteristic of what we just went through and what we're still going through. And so for me, the way that I try to make sense of it is a lot of people try to turn to me to get certain answers and to help make certain decisions in business and in life. And I created a show out of it called Entrepreneurs in Quarantine that I published a little bit everywhere. And I interviewed about 30 professionals to help us walk through, do I have to pay rent? How do I take advantage of government programs? And how do I deal with firing? And what are the HR rules? And what I noticed through interviewing and through speaking with my colleagues is that during COVID, the people that came out on top were the people that dropped the vanity of business, the people that dropped the vanity of the shiny aspects of business and just brought things back to the basics. And so my dropping vanity came in the form of losing a suit, growing a beard, and just pivoting in a way that for me just seemed natural. It was a sign of the times. It was what I was feeling. It wasn't even a PR stunt. It was just me dismantling what I had built over 10 years and just giving a much more raw, to the point, and a lot, much less vanity side to the business of law itself. And so I think that there is something to be said. Carola talked about the pivot and trying to pivot the big beast. And I think that sometimes resisting the pivot is the move, staying the course and not being persuaded into going into things that make money on the short term during what we're going through. And I think there's something to be said for that, trying to stand the test of time and just staying true to what you do as a business and as a leader in order to get us through what we're going through. And so for me, the way that we survived was going back to the basics, literally picking up the phone, continuing to build relationships and continuing to reassure people that that we're there during a very uncertain times.
Great answer, Jamie. Thanks a lot. And I'm happy that you were talking about your beard. I promised Michelle King I was going to start with her question, but Carlos was asking, will the hat and suit combo be a staple Benizri wardrobe post-COVID?
I'm going to petition the court system to allow lawyers to plead in this dismantled fashion. So until a judge orders me to put on a suit, I'm going to try to pull it off.
Okay, fantastic. And that's what happens when it's Ask Me Anything. We're going to have a lot of different types of questions. So to get back to Michelle King, so could we ask the panel, if you have an influencer you think we should follow, who would that be? And there's two parts to her question. Caren, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was checking how to pronounce his name. I follow, and this is marketing related. It's Dave Gerhardt. I can send the LinkedIn link on the chat. I follow him. I really like the little tips and tricks he gives about marketing. And he's at all fancy or like saying way too much. He's really, like, as a marketer, I know that the tips and tricks that he's giving are true. And I'm almost like, wow, you're giving away like a lot of inside information, which is great. So he's a good influencer to follow if you want to know a lot about direct marketing. If you want to know about tips and tricks on copywriting, he's big on copywriting. So he's a fun person to follow if you are in the marketing side.
Thanks. We have him in the chat. Anyone else has special influencers they want to share?
I would add Brian Dean from a more technical / SEO, SEM standpoint. I would recommend, it's a few influencers, but also a few hubs and like few links that you can follow to just, if you want to learn what's the latest and greatest, what's happening in the search / analytics / SEO market. I would say Brian Dean, Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land. I'm going to throw the links as well for everybody to share. And Moz as well. These are great resources, and they're really knowledgeable when it comes to technical / digital marketing.
Yeah, I would say there's a channel called Valuetainment, and Valuetainment, it's an entrepreneur, and he talks a lot about startups, but also everything business related, politics. A lot about what's going on around COVID, very motivational as well. And I think Ryan Holiday was also, he was the chief marketing officer of American Apparel, and he ended up living this type of life to a more, I believe, meaningful one. And he has a channel about stoicism, and he wrote a few really good books like The Obstacle is the Way. It's very popular now, and Ryan Holiday has great resources to help all of us during these uncertain times and accepting things as they are, and looking forward to the most positive part of everything.
Thanks. Do you have any influencers you follow, Carola?
I follow all of you. That keeps me on my toes. So, well, I was just saying, I mean, yes, I follow many different blogs and I guess influencers. Personally, I find that at least at this time, humor is the most, and satire I find the most valuable, just to bring myself back to reality and to realize this is just a moment in time. And so I put in the chat Trevor Noah and John Oliver as two of my favorite comic but realist critics of what happens in the world. And so I find that, you know, you need to make time for humor wherever you can. Whether it influences you or not is irrelevant in my view.
I can't complain. I love a good humor. Really important also for the mood. Jamie, did you have any recommendation in terms of law or just personal favorites?
You know what I mean? I have a lot of little. My feed is stuffed with micro influencers, people who do things on a very small scale. So it's really hard for me to pinpoint somebody who I think that you should follow. I think that some of the usual mediums and kind of the more, I would say, mainstream voices, like, I would be remiss if I didn't mention guys like Gary V. And although we all have our own style, and, guys like him have really set the tone for entrepreneurial influencers across the board. For example, London Real is a great entrepreneurial show who I think is doing a great job in just having raw interview style. And I think Gary V is still the master and still sets the tone for a lot of the content that a lot of other people are putting out there. So it's good. I take all of my influence with a grain of salt, but really try to rely on people who are just doing grassroots kind of things in order for me to get my small doses of inspiration so that I can draw on what's happening in different areas of the world.
Okay, thanks. Well, these are all new to me, so I'll definitely start following them.
Jamie is trying to be humble. I follow his channel. I follow him on LinkedIn, and honestly, you learn about how to pay rent, like he tells you about cases that you see online, about people he's dealt with in the past. He shares his experience. When everything was going crazy, especially through COVID, he was addressing, for example, businesses, people, what you're allowed to do, what you're not. Like, he's on top of his game. He's trying to be humble, but if you want to learn about law, especially local law in Montreal, I follow him. Great resource himself as well.
My man, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's the truth.
Thanks. That was one of the answers that I was hoping. You're all influencers, and I hope that you're all following each other, or at least after this session. Now I'll jump into Nael's question. So again, related a little bit to the post-COVID. So do you see any remote jobs? Do you see remote jobs increasing in popularity with companies, or is it just short-term placeholder due to the world pandemic? How will this change the way people find jobs and connect with people? So again, I always start with Carola, Caren. So let's start with Jamie.
So I can tell you, I can share a personal story where I recently made a post about jobs, and we were seeking 3 new recruits, and we did it well. We ran a really good campaign. We got about 30 CVs and did hire 3 people. One of the people that did interview was asking for a remote position, and very good candidate, checked out really good on paper. We had a great chat. So she fit all the credentials, but because of COVID and because of certain traveling restrictions, she was asking to do it remotely. And I had to decline for a couple of reasons. One, it's very difficult in my line of work to do things remotely because we work in a very fast-paced environment. Clients are walking in and out with immediate needs that need to be tended to. And the office culture that we've built is very hard to replicate online, is very hard to transmit online. And so much like Marcos, who was going through some cultural changes, during COVID and had to kind of reassess what it is to be a leader in the digital world. One of the things that I need to make sure of now is that we have a healthy balance of in-person culture with an office vibe that lends itself to really good productive results and a great office dynamic. And I told her, look, you check out really good on paper, and if you were in front of me, I'd probably hire you, but I can't let you work remotely because it doesn't fit into what we've built. And so it's really hard to reconcile the need for people to work remotely because of transport issues, family issues, and all that stuff, while I run a very traditional office in the back end. So I think it's trying to find that balance while letting people work from home when they need to. But I think that for us, at least, there's going to have to be a happy medium.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good point. One of the things I had to do the most before COVID was to motivate my team, right? So I had to be motivated to be able to motivate my team, especially in a startup environment. You know, it's a roller coaster every day, and it's actually a roller coaster being built while you ride it. So it's hard to keep people excited all the time, but you need that. Otherwise, you can keep pushing further. But I had already realized that, especially for the younger generation, the traditional methodologies were not always working the way I planned. And today I'm surprised to see that having less, I'll call it control over how people work is actually working out pretty well. You need to make sure that you're actually hiring people that are self-sufficient or, are able to motivate themselves to do the job. And you need to have KPIs that can be easily measured in order to see if, we getting some progress. That's a challenge. But I think that in the future, most companies will have or will end up embracing this style of management. And large companies will look into where they can save. And I think that's one place where they're going to start trying to save more money. And we'll end up developing the culture that the startups will have to adapt, because we're always competing with the bigger companies, right? So yeah, that's how I think it's going to progress from now on.
Thanks. Anyone else?
I believe I really like the feedback that was provided. I'm going to add to this the question that was also asked before about what the challenges that we're facing. Now let's answer this as well. Here's something that I always tell my students all the time. It's like the tools that we used to use in the past to fix the problems of the past, we cannot use them anymore to fix the problems of post-pandemic or post-COVID. And where we are right now, it is a bit, as I would agree with Marcus, and I would agree with Jamie, sometimes it's really hard to manage, but we have to adapt. We have to pivot the way we think as managers or as instructors, and then try to make the best out of the situation and look at somewhat what the big companies are doing and try to follow suit in the best way possible. To be frank with you, from an educational standpoint, and I think Carola will maybe agree a bit, it was McGill had a huge pivot, and we had to change immediately within 1 week, everything had to go online. And for us as instructors, it was a really hard pivot from students who were right in front of you that you can actually build that personal relationship with, to people, to everybody behind the screen. But then just by making the best out of the situation, I feel like we can sustain this and we can move forward with a more meaningful remote jobs. This is how I feel.
I would just add to that. I think they're all good points, and I think Jamie makes a good point that it's not one size fits all. It will vary a great deal based on sector of the economy, level of job, seniority of job. Is it a client-facing position? Is it back office? So I don't know that we can say definitively, remote is the future, or everything will go online or virtual. But I do think that, I'm a strong believer in disruption, and I think disruption has a very healthy impact, even when things go back to what we would call normal. It creates openings for both thinking about people differently, thinking about qualifications differently, but even maybe being more flexible in, how do you search for a job? Maybe you will expand your radius. Maybe you will say, well, you know, I actually could do some things remotely without having to move from here to Toronto to be able to do what I want. Or, you know, let me push myself to see, could I find other things? So I think that at the end of the day, we're not, catapulting into a sci-fi world of the future. But I do think that we will see much greater variety of job searches, of expectations, of how people look at qualifications. We already saw some of these trends even before COVID, where if you talk to headhunters, to professional recruiters, you know, they would say, I'm not interested in the resume. Don't send me a resume until, you know, the very end. If I need something to show somebody, I'm going to ask you questions about, you know, what's your favorite food, or what do you like, or what do you dislike? Because it's much more important now that there's that emotional connection, and the emotional intelligence clearly has become a more important value. I'm not saying it trumps your technical skill and your knowledge. And of course, as an educator, I will say you still have to learn. But the reality is there are many more flavors of job searches and expectations.
Yeah, I will add to that, Carola, what everyone said. In my experience, like during COVID, one of the big bias that I was exposed to, and I thought that in my business, because I have to have relationship with clients and I'm used to talk to people and shake hands, with the whole remote new world, for me, the keeping my business remote was a little bit like, okay, let's see if it works, but then it was working. But one of the big things that I was like, how am I going to sell to new clients if I cannot shake their hand? Like, I cannot ask them for a coffee. I cannot go for a lunch. Like, there's no that connection. And to my surprise, we have been closing business amazingly on a Zoom call. They have never seen my face in person. They are super happy with my service. So I think, to everyone's point, we're going to be exposed to different ways to do things. And that disruption, to your point, will be making us adapt and understand actually it's feasible. Like, people will have never thought that education could have been done online, and everyone had to go online in the matter of weeks. Nobody thought that you could be closing business on phone calls, and you're closing business on phone calls. So I think we're going to be adapting to the way this whole thing is going to be evolving.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, everyone. You brought so many great points, and I hear a lot of good stories, bad stories. I know a lot of people have trouble onboarding, but I see the common thing is human interaction. So like you were saying with clients, thank you a lot for all your great answers. So now, anytime we answer a question, if you want to continue debating on it, feel free to open your mic. Let us know if we answer your questions correctly now. And I'll jump to another great question I think we can all relate. So from Diana Viola, have you experienced imposter syndrome? If yes, how have you dealt with it?
I'll jump. Absolutely. I think everyone has felt imposter syndrome. I think on my side, what has helped me, and this is something very personal, but whenever I'm scared about something, or I feel like don't belong, or like there's that, like, what am I doing here? There's actually like a voice that is pushing me to that. It's almost like there's fire and I want to touch it. And I think imposter syndrome is something that you train. It's not something that will go away from one way to the other. I think you have to be exposed to situations where you feel that maybe you don't belong, or you're not qualified for it, or all those things that we actually create ourselves in our head. My tactic to that has been like, oh, am I feeling like that little void in my stomach? Okay, now you go for it. Or that you have to speak on a panel and you are the only one that has an accent because you're an immigrant. I'm like, okay, great. They're going to understand my English in a different way. Like, I'll jump on it. So if I feel a little bit like, oh, then I go for it. And I think with the practice, then you start to realize, then all of the sudden it's gone. And I was reading a LinkedIn post by someone that was saying that imposter syndrome goes kind of in cycles of 3 or 5 years. Things that you were struggling so hard in a moment, one day it's like 2 years happen, and then you're like, no, I'm not struggling about that anymore. And you didn't even realize. You just got exposed to that, you overcome it, and then now you're dealing with something else. But it's because you're growing and you're evolving in that aspect.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I
I
like
see the smile.
to piggyback on that. As an immigrant, we suffer from that a lot. We always think we're not as good as the locals.
Yeah, we know no one.
Yeah, well, we know no one. I work with sharks. I work with financial institutions, large financial institutions, C-levels from financial institutions, people that have been in place since 2008, right? So we know what happened in 2008. And one thing I learned is that actually nobody is better than anybody. We just have slightly different skills. So whenever I get in a meeting, I may seem a little narcissistic, but I just think I'm better than everybody else in the meeting. It's an illusion, but it's just a way to make me sure that I go in with the best I can give. Whatever I can give here, it's gonna be the best I ever gave anywhere in that situation. So I learn a lot, and I just whenever I don't understand or I don't know something, or I think I'm not good enough to do something in that specific situation, and then I just listen more than I talk, and whatever I get as information is going to help me to get further. So this is usually how I behave.
Great point. Thank you for touching on that. I see Tarek going in.
What I would totally understand the same thing with Marcos and Caren. I totally agree. As immigrants, I think comes from the background, comes from the way we're raised. Most probably, like we go through that all the time. The only thing I would add to what Marcos said is think about always be learning. Don't think about always be perfect. Think that whatever experience, whatever is going to happen for you is going to happen for you. It's not happening to you as an individual. This is the number one you have to bear in mind, no matter what the situation. And honestly, everybody on this panel, and I can say it comfortably, has to stand up in front of people almost every other day. Have to face the beast almost every day. It is what it is. It's part of what we do, and we have to compare ourselves to who we were yesterday, build on that, and not compare ourselves to someone else's today in any way possible. It is about you right now, what you can make the best out of the moment. And there's a meditation. I hope this helps. I'm into meditation a lot. Marcos knows that. There's a meditation. It says there's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. This is it. And I really love it. Every day I listen to the same meditation. And it says, this is it. Like, don't feel like it is what it is, and build from there, and be brave. And as long as at the end of the day, you're looking yourself in the eye and your friends and your family in the eye, and you're doing your best, that is it. I hope this helps.
I think if I can just add to that, I think you make a really good point, which is it's the best answer to imposter syndrome is authenticity. And it's just being yourself and believing in yourself. And I think to the point that Caren made earlier, you think you can't sell something. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to sell yourself. And if you have self-doubts, yeah, you don't have to be perfect, but you need to say, I am who I am. Sometimes I make mistakes, but I've lived with myself for a good long time. I'm planning to do so for another good long time. So this is what you get. And when you go into a situation with that attitude and you don't pretend to be something that you're not, I think it makes it a little bit easier. Doesn't take away the fears. It doesn't solve all of the problems. You'll still end up in situations that might be uncomfortable, but at least you're being honest with yourself.
Great. So I see Jamie's thumbs up.
I love that. I love people throw around authenticity these days like it's going out of style, but it's so valid. Understanding true authenticity, I think, is key to preventing. Authenticity is the best insurance policy against imposter syndrome. If I can summarize what everyone before me just said, because, you know, when people meet me offline, I think they don't know how I'm going to be. They don't know how I'm going to react. They don't know what to expect from me, because I guess I've developed a persona online. And so people are like, oh, you really are in person the way that you portray yourself online. And I'm like, well, yeah, who else would I be? And so I think a lot of people get surprised. And I think that, you know, when I lost my marketing director 3 years ago and I took over communications for all my brands, that's when my authenticity factor went up. That's when my credibility went up. And that's when my ability to connect with people online and convert those into real world relationships where it really matters. That's where my stock really went up, because people knew that Jamie Benizri really talks that way. He's really the person that you'll expect to meet in person is really the way that he is online. So I think that's really important, because look, there's nothing worse than following someone online or being introduced to somebody who has, you know, a certain reputation, and then being underwhelmed or being disappointed with the way they are in person, because that will completely obliterate everything that you've worked to build and create for yourself over so long. So I think it's so important to be authentic, you know, and do all the things that all the other my fellow panelists have talked about, because that'll translate into really good paying clients and good relationships and everything else. And so that's my 2 cents on imposter syndrome.
I want to add something that I think it could be a good practice as well, is getting to know yourself. A lot of people don't spend the time to getting to know themselves, right? So do the exercise to understand what are your strengths, you know, what are your weaknesses, what are the things you think you should improve, what is your personality, you know, what personality type do you have, and where you think you can excel. So getting to know yourself gives you a lot of confidence.
Excellent point, Marcos. And it takes a lot of courage to love itself, and of course to be proud and able to share it with the world. Thank you a lot, and I hope that authenticity never gets lost. We have another great question from Deanna. People speak about mindfulness, healthy habits, waking up at 5 a.m., etc., etc. To be successful and get things done, do you have a personal rituals to help you thrive in what you do?
I can go. It's no fancy at all, but it's a notebook where I type everything and I make lists. I live out of making lists. And funny thing, a few years ago, I was like, how come in 2020 I can be having like an agenda with like pen and paper? Like I should have everything on my phone, on an app. There's so many productivity tools, whatever. And I ditched my agenda, and disaster. Like things wouldn't move. I wouldn't get things done. So my case are lists, and I get pleasure about like marking down things that I do. The other thing that has been working, especially during the pandemic, that it's something that I never did. I'm finding myself extremely more productive. And there could be 2 factors that I'm attributing into it. There's the commute that I'm not doing. I live in the West Island. I work downtown. So I'm saving around maybe 3 hours per day on that side. That's a lot. Because of the whole remote scenario, I think everyone is way leaner. Like everyone, it's making content, like it's a quick Zoom call, 15 minutes, sometimes meetings in person, like they go longer. So that's another factor. And I'm breaking my day. I'm running every day since the pandemic started. And sometimes I'm like, how am I going to run? Like it's 11 a.m. and I'm going to be losing most like a whole hour, around 30 minutes plus shower, whatever. And in my previous like period pandemic, I will be like, I'm cutting my day. Like, how can I be like coming back? That break for me personally I don't know why it's making, it's kind of it's a good break to keep things moving on my second time of the day. So I'm very, very manual. So my lists, and I'm doing something to break my day. So maybe for other people will help to have that break.
Thanks.
I can go.
Yeah, you can go, Tarek.
I really love what Caren said. For a few reasons, I really, really love what she says. But Caren, we're brothers and sisters in arms. There's nothing like the check mark or the dash. And I see, Carola, she has her copybook up. I swear to you, Caren, and I can tell this to everybody, when we work in the most technical industry and fastest paced industry possibly out there, and people look at me like, Tarek, why are you still coding a copybook? Like, why are you doing this? I'm like, let me be. Like, this works. This really, really works. And there's a sense of achievement that comes with it that Caren mentioned that I could totally, totally feel as well. That's one. I start my day by reading. And I do my own conversation with God every morning, and my reading, and by taking care of me. This is what I always do every single morning. Like, I start by myself, by my meditation, by my time, because the rest of the day I'm going to spend for people and with people and for clients. And it goes in the same line that Caren mentioned. It's like, she's still, and I know how busy she is, even though I don't know her, but I know how busy she is, and how hard it is to take a break from work. But without taking care of yourself, how can you take care of others? You have to put your mask on, in the plane, you put your own mask on, and then put the mask on others. So I would say, under the title of being mindful, to be mindful to others, you have to be mindful to yourself. Life as it is already tough, and we're already hustling and working hard for it. We need to take care of ourselves first before taking care of others. And I don't know if you know Jordan B. Peterson. He wrote 12 Rules of Life. He talked about that if we got a prescription from a doctor for our dog, we most definitely would give it to the dog. But we, by percentage, 50% of us will not get the prescription after we get it from the doctor. So I would say take care of yourself first, and things will move from there.
Totally agree. And I see Marcos wants to step in.
I can step in. Yes, I'm big in routines, a bit obsessed sometimes. So I think I see so much result out of it that I really want to do a lot of things to stay in peak mode. So everything from the classic meditation to breathing exercises, prayers, and physical exercise as well. But a couple that really work for me, and we're talking about notebooks. I have mine here as well next to me, but it's not really, I have checklists on it, but for me it's more about journaling. Journaling is an amazing exercise. I recommend. It's like therapy. It's like being your own therapist. It really helps you to have a conversation with yourself and with God, and getting to know yourself, and reflecting on everything you live. So we never stop to really think, okay, what went well, what went wrong, how can I do things better? And journaling does that. So I spend quite some time journaling every day. Another very simple one is gratefulness. It takes 1 minute. That's the first thing I do every day, and already puts me in peak mode, which is thinking about 3 things I'm grateful for. Try to, of course, change those things every day, and go from very simple ones to be able to, have my journal and paper and pen, to the love of my parents, for example. And talk about parents, spending time with family and friends. It's also a great routine. For me, it became more and more important, especially because I live abroad and I don't really have family and friends around me. So learning how to be able to do that, brings a lot of energy, and being around people that you love, and being present at least a few minutes a day makes a huge difference. And another one is to give back. I always try to do something, at least one thing a day to give back. So those are my top ones, but I do have a lot of ones. So if anybody's interested, they can contact me after.
anyone else wants to share their rituals, or we jump into the next question. Find it funny that the digital marketers people also take notes. I don't know if I find it super easy to write it on paper. My handwriting is not the best, but I love the tips, and I would love also if people in the audience, if they want to start sharing also their rituals, sharing some comments, it would be nice to learn from each other. So thank you very much for this nice question. The next one is directed at Caren. So from Amir Zargam, as an immigrant, what were some of the ups and downs you faced in starting a career in Canada?
So there are a lot. So I'll provide a little bit of background. I am an electronic engineer by career. I spent 7 years in university to have a master in electronic engineer and program robots. And I have never done that in my life. I have always been in marketing since day one. Coming to Canada and explain in interviews that I'm a marketer, but yes, I went to electronic engineering university was a little bit of a challenge, along with other challenges as language, as understanding the job market. I think one of the things that helped me navigate into finding myself into a position that I will work here in Canada was to understand how to translate the things that I knew that I work with into the job market in Quebec. And it's not the same, for example, in my country, like coordinator has a different meaning than here. Like what I used to be, for example, back in the days in Venezuela, was an analyst here in Canada. So the good part of it is that immigrants have a lot of resources to go to and trying to navigate to how to understand how to create your CV, how to approach a job position, how to get the interview that you're looking for. So my takeaway as an immigrant is use all the help that you can get, like being as, let's say, selfish in a way to take all that help. I went to every single like conference. I did unpaid internships. I worked with a cinematographer for a movie, had nothing to do with my career, but I was like, at least I'm gonna practice my French. I give balloons on the street for Just for Laughs festival, just for the sake of like saying bonjour, oui, à droite, à gauche. So the challenges are there, and I think I was lucky in the sense that I had a good French and my English was strong as well, and I had a career that that it wasn't too difficult to find a job with. But I have had friends, and even my husband, it was a big challenge for him to understand and to translate that thing that you were doing in your country to translate it into a different job market. But the help is there. I think one of the reasons even why I choose to move to Quebec specifically was because it was one of the regions in Canada that had the biggest help for immigrants and to support them with their integration in the new country. So my recommendation would be to use as many resources and never be shy in asking for help. Asking for help, it's a skill. People don't ask for help. And one of the things that I developed in my career as an immigrant, as an entrepreneur, is asking for help. And that's super key when in the immigrant topic. You are new, you don't know. I didn't even know where to do groceries, and it's basic. Like, yeah, you go to Walmart or you go to Super C or whatever. But I want to know where do people go? Like, is it better Maxi or Super C or IGA? Which one is more expensive? Like, you need to ask. And that's a quality that people, I think, need to be more comfortable with, to ask for help and ask for questions. I don't know if I'm answering. I think I went through everywhere.
That was a very complete answer. Thank you,
Yeah.
Elsie. Very inspiring. Thank you for sharing. And exactly like he was saying, I think everyone comes from somewhere else. So if any of the other panelists also wants to elaborate on that topic, would you want to start, Carola?
On an immigrant's experience here. Sure. So I think I'm still trying. I joke I have barely been off the island in the 2 years that I've been here, in part because I've been so focused on work. I gave up my car when I moved here, so all of a sudden I spend most of my time exploring the city, and I think find what free time I have. I think really walking the streets, and I don't mean that in a professional way, but getting to know your neighborhood and asking, you know, where do you go, where do you find things? That's exactly, I think, one of the most. One of the best ways also getting to meet people, because everybody wants to share what they know, and everybody has their favorite restaurant and their favorite this or their favorite that. So doing that has been very helpful to me. So I think just being open to asking questions of any kind, not just for help, but just asking people, where did you get your haircut? I like your haircut. Or where did you go and where did you buy this? These are things that you can, I'm a great reader of guidebooks and maps. I love maps. But at the end of the day, I still need to, you know, get some guidance from somebody else. The other thing I would say, though, speaking of maps, is don't be afraid to get lost, and take the metro to a place that you haven't been to and just walk around, or get on a bus. Of course, now people are a little bit more reluctant. Wear your mask when you do that. But it's just saying, you know, let me go, let me keep my eyes open, let me be aware, let me pay attention to my surroundings is super important. The other thing that I don't do very well, but I try to do, is watch local television in French. My French it comes and goes. But I find that, you know, if I'm really tired, then it's just too difficult to have to listen to another language. But I try to make sure that I listen to the radio, or I listen to television, just to keep the sound in my head and to get the rhythm, especially for Québécois. C'est assez difficile de suivre. So I find that you have to immerse yourself.
I'll add something quick on what Carola said, because it reminded me something that my dad told me. When I moved to Canada, my dad told me, it goes in Spanish, but it's like, donde fueres, haz lo que vieres, which translate means like, wherever you go, do what people do. So if you are not accustomed to go skiing, because my country is a tropical country, but people go and enjoy the cold weather, you have to try to get there. And if people go on cabana sucre, then you will adapt those traditions. I think that's super important. And I became Canadian a couple of years ago, and on my ceremony, there was I think she was a deputy of the community on the zone where the ceremony was, and she was saying, like, one of the big things is, like, you are now a part of this community, so get yourself into this community, participate in your community, integrate yourself. And I was like, that's so powerful, because I want to keep my tradition, and I'll be Latina in Venezuela, and I will teach my kids about their grandparents and the beautiful country that I come from. But I also want them to be completely integrated into their new home. And that goes outside of the home. That goes going to the local park. That goes with, like, enjoying those activities with other Canadians and other people within your neighborhood. So that's, I think, is super, super important.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that, because I lived in many countries, and since I'm a kid, my mom kicked me out of the house and said, go live abroad, which was a blessing. And she always told me, don't stay, you know, that's debatable, but don't stay among your own culture. Stay with the local culture, right? So it's true that we face many more challenges as immigrants, but you have to try to learn and understand about the local culture, hang out with locals, embrace it as your own. It doesn't mean you're going to deny your previous, the place you're coming from. Always remember where you're coming from. But if you chose to live in another place, now this is your home, and you have to embrace it as your home and be grateful to your hosts. As I said, I believe immigrants have more challenges, but we have to stop with putting ourselves in this victim position and think that we are just as good as everybody else. We're going back to the authenticity part, and actually we are bringing more to the table. We are bringing things that other people don't have in here. So as long as you can embrace whatever you can learn locally and add to what you're already bringing to the table, you're actually adding much more value. And this is why Canada is what it is today, because that's how I believe the country was built. And one thing that can help also is look at other immigrants that you can look up to and contact them and ask them how they did. Today is very easy online to, reach out to an influencer and say, hey, I admire what you do. This is my situation. What you recommend? And look for mentors.
Great. Great, everyone. Thanks for sharing. I don't know if Jamie, you wanted to add something on this, or you were born and raised here, or?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that I don't have as much credibility because I was born in Montreal.
Have you ever worked somewhere else, or?
I can tell you that I've always wondered. I've always looked at immigration as I come from a family of immigrants. So my grandparents came from Morocco in '56. My grandparents came here after the war. These are people that I grew up with, and so I saw what my grandparents went through to make a living, fitting into the culture, trying to make a life for their kids, and spoiling them with everything that they never had growing up, and the poverty and the eradication of their own families back home during the wars. And it's always stuck with me. There's this feeling of guilt of being born here, and needing to compensate for the fact that we have these opportunities that the people for whom I am indebted to for being here never had. And I think that immigrant mentality of being hungry and survival is something that I think everybody should tap into. And so, Marcos and Tarek and Caren, who speak authentically about their experiences, for me are completely empowering, because I'll never know what it is not to fit in. I mean, you're born into the culture, your friends are of the same culture, and you don't have the same pressures. If you didn't find a summer job that summer, well, guess what? Your parents still fed you. You still speak the same language as everybody in the schoolyard. You kind of look and feel and you wear the same clothes as everybody. So, there's always a feeling for me of guilt of knowing what it took for my grandparents to fit in and making a living for themselves as entrepreneurs, because they were forced into entrepreneurship. And you want to talk about the glory of entrepreneurship, my grandparents, who are the first generation entrepreneurs, these are the real entrepreneurs. Today we've glamorized it with all kinds of concepts, but it was really a matter of survival, because nobody wanted to give them a job because they didn't speak the language, they had no education, and they didn't fit in. So for me, those stories are really empowering. And I'm humbled to hear them today.
I would just add one thing. Thank you, Jamie, by the way. And I would add one thing that the way I found my job to kind of build on what Caren and Marco said, I actually volunteered. I really gave my time for 4 months before I graduated at Concordia, and I'll be more specific. It used to be called CMS, Career Management Services at Concordia. I volunteered 4 months or 5 months of my life. I was welcoming employers to the school every other week. I'll be like, hey, this is set up, this is everything, this is set up. Like, I used to do the technical work for them. And then one employer, the moment I was about to graduate, it was New Year's Eve, and I was like, hey, everything is set up, you're good to go. I was watching the presentation. I'm like, I want this marketing job. And I went to them and I'm like, I would love to apply. They're like, well, we trust your work ethics because you're here and you're volunteering. It was already a door open for me. So my parents always said that you never get poor by, and it's known like for everyone, but you never get poor by giving. So I would say give back as much as you want, as much as you can, or even when you don't have much. And the world and the universe and God will give you back. And in this situation, it was an immediate reward just because I volunteered. I got my first job. So I would just add to the great feedback that was given by the other panelists by volunteering.
Well, thanks. Great. So I see that you're starting also to answer on the chat. The chat is going crazy. I'm happy that it's going that way. So we had a question from Rafte that I know it's continuing also, but just wanted to get onto that so everyone can enjoy. So how do you see the future for people at the start of their career and used to work for startups? People who still need to develop their skills. It was aligned to Marco's, but I think everyone can pitch in.
I don't think it was for me, but I was following this question because I think it's a good one. And I was hoping you'd jump on it. Yeah, so that's a good point. What I would recommend in this case is, because this type of people have a hard time getting jobs in larger companies because they say, oh, you have expertise in a startup, but you never work for a larger company, and then they get a little stuck. And now it's maybe a little harder to get jobs in startups. So what I would recommend is, and I just did that recently. I hired someone that actually was excellent. And she told me, look, I want to get this job because I want to learn from you guys. That striked, and I said, okay, well, I'll spend some time teaching what I can over the summer. And she did an amazing job. So going and reaching out to founders directly and telling them, hey, I already have some experience with startups. Right now, everybody's working remotely. I don't know you personally, but I like what you do, and I followed you, and I want to learn from you what kind of position you have. And then, there is always something to be done somewhere. I think this approach will open a lot of doors. And that's an approach that, I would embrace, and I would hire someone that does that if I have something to offer at that specific time. So that I think it's totally doable right now, especially if you already have some experience with startups.
Yeah, on my side, like for me, working with a lot of startups being my client, and me seeing how they work with their own team, I think a startup is a great start in your career, because you get to wear so many different hats, and there's so many things that are not yet defined. So if you're a young professional, there's a lot of creativity and a lot of ideas that you can actually push forward as a professional in a startup. I read something at some point that said along the lines that in a startup, you're expected to know how to do things even if you don't know it. Like you're expected to figure it out. And that's a big undertaking, because for a young entrepreneur, it's like, I know nothing, like ask me like I just came out of university. But the good thing about startup is that it's okay a startup usually have a big testing mentality. So it's a great way to start working at the beginning of your career. If you happen to go to somewhere corporate, it's also good. It's a structure. You know what to do from A to Z. I had the pleasure to work in big companies in Venezuela for Telefónica, which is the third biggest telecom company in the world right now. And here in Canada, I work for AMIA, for Aeroplan, huge corporation, big structure, everything's organized. But I also work at startups. I work at luxury retreats, and there's pros and cons in both. Me personally, I love the speed and fast-paced environments. I really liked my experience in luxury retreats, and now as an entrepreneur and as a providing consulting services, I like the speed at I can be working with a startup company where I'm dealing directly with the owner or the founder to make business decisions. So I don't think those things will change post-COVID. If anything, as we were saying before, we're just going to be faced into different ways to do business, into different ways to work, into different ways to push for ideas. Yeah, not sure if I'm answering the question, but those are my thoughts.
I'll take a stab at it if I may.
Okay.
So I think that the distinction is, I can tell you another story that I lost. One of the 3 recruits that I told the audience about earlier, I lost one of them this week. People think that I broke him because things happened too quickly and the stress maybe was too high over the last couple of weeks. And it's because I still act like a startup. I still act as if I'm going to lose everything that I've built tomorrow or the week after. And so because I don't take anything for granted, because things change so quickly, and because we do things at such a quick pace, I've learned to be comfortable in the chaos. And so my patterns are very fluid. I really do live my life and my agenda on a 24-hour cycle. My wife does book certain things for us in advance, but when it comes to my professional life, unless my staff books it for me, I literally work on a 24-hour cycle. And so all this to say that it really depends on your character. Getting out of law school, some people only want to work for a big firm because their parents worked for a big firm, because they think they have a legacy at a firm, because, you know, for them it's important to work at an established firm with very rigorous guidelines, very rigorous. And then you have other people who have a little bit more of an entrepreneurial spirit, people who are attracted to a little bit of a different approach. And I think that there's really no right answer. There's no right or wrong. It's a personality question. And so the person who wouldn't fit into my office maybe belongs in a more structured environment like a Venezuela Telecom or an AMIA. So I think that it really depends on your character, and you know right away if you fit in or not. You know, this doesn't take you 5 years to figure out if you're an inside the box or an outside the box kind of person. And the best people who are placed before going in, the reason why I think Marcos and Caren are so successful is because they volunteered in 100 places. They know what they like, they know what they didn't, but they got their foot into the door into all these places because they weren't afraid. They wanted to get to know themselves better, like Marcos said. Caren wanted to get the experience. And so that's why they are who they are today. They know themselves really well because they really put themselves out there. So my advice to anyone is just go out there and do it. Work, do an internship somewhere, go abroad, do something. Don't just go into your industry with this preconceived notion of my parents want me to be a lawyer, or my parents want me to be an engineer, or I want to be in a big firm or a small firm. You have no idea what the hell you want going into your industry, because you think you want to be a lawyer because you watch Suits, or you think you want to be a doctor because you watch, whatever McLovin show where the doctors fall in love and have sex all over the hospital. But that's not the way the real world, our office is a little bit like Suits, but besides that, the real world doesn't really operate like that.
Thanks. I love a good laugh while still being super serious on the topic. This was amazing. I don't know if anyone wants to add a little bit on this. Because the next question is from Ryan Al-Rashidi. Since we are all now working and studying remotely, in your point of view, what is the best way to pitch yourself? Usually the body language plays a major role when meeting new person or clients, yet we now only have the screen, which sometimes doesn't reflect reality, especially in terms of job interviews. If you want, you can start with Carola. I know you give a lot of speeches.
Sorry, I was on mute there, trying to follow you. Boy, I'm not sure how I would answer that question. I try to listen to my audience. I try to listen to what people, what matters, and I try to keep that front and center. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about it a little bit more. Maybe you can go to someone else first, and I'll come back.
Oh, Tarek.
Yes, I can help out. I'll be frank with you. Yes, body language is extremely important, but here's the story. Look at it as if you have things that you can control in life and things that you can't control in life. And in this situation, the big difference about the situation is that we're all in it. There's no exception. We're all in this process together. So concentrate on the things that you can control and try to not worry at all about the things that you can't. And when I say things that you can control, I interview a lot of people for a lot of other marketing agencies. I talk with a lot of people. I do a lot of classes online, and there's factors that will differentiate you from other people right off the bat. For example, I'm going to speak from a marketing standpoint. The certifications. What did you do in the past few months when it was COVID? How many certifications did you attain? What few books did you read? Try to improve your repertoire. Put everything on your side with the factors that you can control. And I wouldn't, like, of course, body language is still extremely important. You can still feel it from the way I'm talking to you through the screen. Put it this way, but concentrate. I would say put more weight on things that you can control.
I could say that your image is projected in any means of communication, right? You can project your image in 2 lines in an email, on the phone, and on camera. So I think a combination of all of those communication channels is important. When you want to sell yourself, you have to be good in all of them. All of them has to be well thought. And if you're trying to get a job, you know, your email, your phone call, the tone of voice, the way you're going to write it, what you're going to write it. If you make no mistakes, for example, in your email, it makes a huge difference. If someone is looking for a job and is sending me an email with a mistake, I won't hire right away, or on LinkedIn as well. And I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn. I reply to some of them because many of them, it's like they didn't even think about writing to me. So yeah, the other person on the other side wants to feel special like anybody else. And you can do that in very different ways.
And again, I think it's really, it's tuning into who you're talking to, who your audience is, what's the purpose, what are you trying to achieve, and making sure that you know who. I do a lot of background research before I talk to someone, so that I have, even if it's, I'm not trying to stalk the person. So, you know, I don't want to say, oh, you know, Caren, how are your children, if I don't know anything about you personally. But there is a sense of, you know, is it just simply that you're writing the same letter to thousands of people, or you're giving the same talk to, you know, in 100 different venues, and it might as well be, you know, it could be Timbuktu today and Singapore tomorrow, and it makes no difference. So adapting what you are saying and how you are saying to the audience and to the recipient, if it's in writing, I think is super important. It shows respect. It's, you know, even if you're not the one who's getting hired, the fact that you're asking me to take time out of my day to listen to you speak, or to read your email or your message on LinkedIn, show me some respect, and don't make it feel like you're just casting, you know, out for thousands. Now, the reality is you may in fact be casting out to thousands, and I'm not naive to think that that's not what you're doing, but I still feel better if you address the message to me, or you recognize that you are speaking to a particular audience.
Yeah, because if you apply that, you know, that will reflect on the work you're going to do as well. So it's not because we really care about feeling special. It's because if we are hiring someone, we want this person to be a good professional. And if they were not a good professional out of the bat, they won't be, at least for a little while until they learn, right?
Yeah, I will add to what Marcus and Carola were sharing. It's so true that it's not only about your 30-minute or 1-hour interview. You're selling yourself in any possible platform that you have been interacting with that person, from an email, from that phone call, from your social media. And to Carola's point, I do also do background check on any person that I'm interviewing. And it's not to her point, like, it's just to understand, like, trying to understand more the personality of this person. And nowadays, for a lot of people have their life public on social media. So I think there is a fine line between your personal brand and your business or professional brand, and they are separate, yes, but they coexist. So whatever you do in your LinkedIn, on your Facebook, on your Instagram, it's gonna somehow affect positively or negatively in your professional or business life. So, and going back to a topic that we were talking a few minutes ago, authenticity like trumps everything. Like you won't be convincing someone on a phone call or an interview about someone you are not, if it's not reflecting on the other channels that you're interacting with in the world. So keep in mind that authenticity, and also to Carola's point, prepare yourself to win those interviews.
I would just add one other thing that you just triggered, Caren, which is you want to really be careful about your social media profiles. And this is, and I'm sure many of you have heard this from other colleagues at CATS and from your professors, particularly younger generations. I just recently had an exchange with one of my nephews who I follow on Twitter, and he's a super smart young man. But every once in a while, there's a message where I think, well, if that could come back to bite you later, because either you've used language that is inappropriate, or you've indicated something that might show a particular preference that later on you might want to rethink that position if you don't know what your next job is going to be. So I think keeping being careful about how we present ourselves without self-censorship. Again, you want to be true to yourself, but you don't need to put everything out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I said before in a panel actually with CATS, if you're looking to get a job, you have to exist on LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, you're dead to me. I will never check that up. I have the CV. I don't care. You have to be active and alive on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Thanks, Caren. I always use that sentence in our workshops. People really pay attention when you say it. Thanks you for reminding it again. And I love the comment also of Carola. Thank you note. Sounds old-fashioned, but makes the whole difference. So for sure, now that everything is online, it's good to be creative. I see we're reaching the end of the session. If you guys want to continue, if there's nothing stopping you, I can shoot you more questions. You as the speaker, you're pretty much the boss of this session. So how much time do you have? Do you want to continue?
I unfortunately have to head out to another meeting shortly. I have a few minutes, but you have great other people here.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'll try ending this with a last question that I saw a lot of support from the rest of the participants. So it's from Daria Stomakian. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I'll go there. I replied to Daria, I think on the chat. I will say, Caren, you're doing fine. Don't stop. Keep it going. That's it. Positive.
I would say concentrate on value and meaning over profit. And even though things sometimes are tough, of course, keep going. And even if, as you get older in life, I'm saying it like I'm 79, but like as you get older in life, you realize that the unique decisions that your younger self made that made you a bit afraid are what made you who you are right now. So I would say just be brave, be unique, and be authentic, to add whatever to all my panelists, to the other panelists said before.
I would say develop your awareness as early as possible. Get to know yourself and get to understand different strategies that other successful people have developed that you can learn from. I think the earliest you learn from other successful people, you're gonna get a huge advantage compared to a lot of people that are just doing what everybody else is doing. Think outside of the box.
How are you?
Thanks. Great. So I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in, but we have Kamal one of the few participants who raised his hand. Do you want to speak up?
Hello, everyone. Sorry, the last minute sort of participation. I am Kemal Salmasi. I'm the coordinator for entrepreneurship, management, and international business programs at the School of Continuing Studies. So I just wanted to let you know that we have great programs and resources for entrepreneurship and business programs. So if anyone is interested to reach out to me for resources, please do so. I will post my email. Sorry, I lost my voice a little bit. So you can sort of contact with me. Thank you so much, and thank you for your participation. Great session. Thanks.
Great. And now, just before ending, Carola, before leaving, can you give us quick advice to your younger self?
Patience. When I think about where I was in my life when it's now many more than 20 years ago, I would say, I thought things were going to happen like this, and my plan was going to be mapped out, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I should say when I was 5, maybe, I wanted to be a ballerina, astronaut, oceanographer, all at the same time. Then I realized, you have to know math and you need to know statistics, and I was really bad at both of those, and I was not that graceful, and so those plans went by the wayside. Then I was going to save the world. I was going to rescue every refugee there was, and I was going to bring peace to the world, and boy, that took a lot more time than I had at that point. So I just, now when I think back, I say, you do what you can. And as long as you are passionate about it and you care about it and you put your all into it, just know that it will take more time and it'll take longer and it'll take more effort than you thought. And that's okay. And you'll get done what you can get done, and just be open to the fact that you may never see the end of
it. Thanks. And last but not least, Jamie. What would you say to young Jamie?
A couple great things. So, I mean, just to conclude, really quick things. I think now, just to go back on the last question, now that I thought about it, this is the most unreal time that we're living in, because we have the power to control the perception of the people.
Oh, I think we just got one of the...
You just lost him?
Things that happens with virtual meetings. So yes, hopefully we'll share his answer with you in our social media.
Oh no.
I was really looking forward to the answer. He even thought about it. So we're gonna definitely ask for him to share it with you. So I just want to say thanks to all the panelists for sharing so many great insights, stories. Was really wondering where this was going to go with the Ask Me Anything. Thank you, the audience. These were amazing questions. And I don't know if anyone has some last words for closing this session. But yeah, thank you very much for staying that long. And I hope to see you in all of the other events of the Power Skills. Up next, we're having, today we're having Rashida, Sonia Di Malo, Austin Belkak, and Oren Wainbrough. So thank you very much. I'll stop the recording now, and you can now start to be natural.
Authentic.